In 1933, some American families survived on meals that cost less than 5 cents. A pot of beans could sit on the stove for several days at a time. Bread was never thrown away, and children often drank watered-down milk so it would last until the end of the week. Many homes had no refrigerators, no fast food, no kitchen cabinets filled with food. Just cheap meals stretched as long as possible. Parents reused leftovers because throwing away even a small piece of food could mean going hungry the next day. Sometimes dinner was nothing more than thin soup and a few pieces of potato. Many children went to bed hungry. Empty shelves and worn wooden tables became part of daily life. Meat was rare, and sugar was considered a luxury in many homes. One of the most common meals during the Great Depression was simple beans. Families bought them in large sacks because they were cheap and could last for months. In many homes, a pot of beans stayed on the stove for days without ever being fully emptied. People added whatever they could find. Sometimes a little onion, sometimes cheap pork fat, and sometimes nothing but water and salt. Meat became rare for millions of families. Potatoes were added to almost every meal to make it feel heavier. Even stale bread was never wasted. It was soaked in water, fried in grease, or dropped into soups instead of meat. Children scraped the last bits of food from their bowls because nothing could be thrown away. But one of the strangest meals of the era was ketchup soup. For many struggling families, ketchup soup became a real dinner during the hardest years of the Depression. It was made with hot water, ketchup, salt, pepper, and sometimes a little flour to make it feel thicker. In some homes, leftover potatoes or small pieces of onion were added to the pot. The soup cost only a few cents, but for many people it was enough to quiet hunger for one more night. Children often ate it with dry bread that had already gone stale. Families sat quietly at worn kitchen tables, trying to make small portions last as long as possible. Empty jars, cheap spices, and old grease-covered pots filled tiny kitchens across America. Some people ate the same meal several nights in a row because there was simply nothing else left in the house. And while ketchup soup may sound strange today, millions of Americans once saw it as completely normal. Breakfast looked very different in poor American homes during the 1930s. Fresh milk spoiled quickly, so families often mixed it with water to make it last longer. Instead of real coffee, many adults drank weak substitutes made from roasted grains or burnt bread. Breakfast tables were usually small and nearly empty. Thin oatmeal, cold biscuits, or a single boiled potato could become the entire meal for a family before work or school. Butter was expensive, so people sometimes spread cheap grease on bread instead. Sugar was treated like a luxury in many homes, and children often ate bland porridge with almost no flavor at all. Parents tried not to complain, even when they started the morning hungry. Some workers spent entire days with little more than weak coffee and bread in their stomachs. For millions of Americans, even breakfast became another reminder of how difficult survival had become. In many homes, parents quietly gave up food so their children could eat first. Adults often claimed they had already eaten earlier, even when they were secretly hungry themselves. Dinner tables sometimes held only a few potatoes, a little beans, and pieces of stale bread, barely enough for everyone in the house. Children were usually served first, while parents waited until the end of the meal to eat whatever remained. Some mothers deliberately filled their bowls with more broth than food, so their children would not notice how little was left. Families stretched dinner with long conversations and slow eating, hoping the feeling of fullness would last a little longer. After exhausting days of work, many adults went to sleep with empty stomachs. Some drank water before bed, just to ease the pain of hunger. Even in the hardest years, parents continued doing everything they could to protect their children from the reality of poverty. Nothing in poor households was allowed to go to waste. Leftovers from one meal almost always became part of the next one. Old potatoes were fried again in reused grease, while stale bread was soaked in water or dropped into soups to make them feel heavier. Even bones were boiled multiple times in an attempt to pull out every last bit of flavor. Kitchens often smelled like smoke, onions, and cheap grease from old stoves that stayed hot late into the night. Some families made what people later called garbage soup, throwing scraps of vegetables, potato peels, and breadcrumbs into the same pot. The food rarely looked appealing, but appearance no longer mattered when survival was the priority. Small jars filled with leftovers sat on shelves waiting to be reused again the next day. During the Depression, wasting food was something many families simply could not afford. Sweet food became rare for many families during the Depression. Simple desserts that once felt ordinary slowly turned into small luxuries. One of the cheapest treats was bread pudding made from dried bread, hot water, and a little sugar whenever families could afford it. Some people mixed breadcrumbs with syrup or leftover jam to create a little more flavor. In poorer neighborhoods, children sometimes ate plain bread covered with sugar or soaked in watered-down milk for dessert. Families also fried simple dough and reused grease to make cheap homemade donuts. The food was often too greasy, too dry, or almost tasteless. But even small sweets helped people forget their problems for a short time. For many children, these simple desserts became rare moments of comfort during years filled with hunger, stress, and constant uncertainty about the next meal. Across America, long lines for free food became a common sight during the worst years of the Depression. Thousands of people gathered outside charity kitchens, hoping to receive a bowl of soup, a piece of bread, and a cup of hot coffee. Many stood outside for hours in cold weather just to get a single meal. For some families, these kitchens were the only thing keeping them alive. People often felt ashamed to accept free food because only a few years earlier, they had normal jobs and stable lives. Men in worn coats waited silently, while children stayed close to their parents in crowded streets and food lines. Steam rose from bowls of hot soup as exhausted people tried to warm their hands in the freezing air. For an entire generation of Americans, hunger, cheap meals, and constant food shortages became unforgettable memories that stayed with them for the rest of their lives.